for those of you who are new, there was a divine idea in the mind of creation that appears a bit nuts in the human realm. I invited questions from the community because what occurred to me in meditation was that this is your community, this is your service, and I can say what is alive in me, but that may not be what you want or need to hear. So I invited questions from the community. And so I don't know the context of the talk until Sunday morning. When I spin this and wherever it lands, I have an overarching, we're doing the second part of tradition 2 in the recovery process. For our group purpose, there is but one ultimate authority, a loving God, as he may express himself in our group conscience. Our leaders are but trusted servants, they do not govern. This morning we're doing the back half of that. Our leaders are but trusted servants, they do not govern. And so let's see how that's going to get contextualized. The question is, how do you do this for a career? Because truly, when I invite whatever questions you have, I mean it. You may notice that there is a 3-letter question on the board that somebody added. So there it is. All right. Let's take a breath together. So, for those of you who have been following the CSL themes, we're not doing that this year. Our theme this year is first things first. First thing first. Because what came alive in me when I was visioning for this year was that we have a ton of knowledge. We got a lot of stuff in our heads, but we don't have a lot of tools, a lot of concrete nuts and bolts tools. And most folks are aware that I have 42 years in 12-step recovery. And those are the most simple, accessible spiritual tools that I have ever run across for living a spiritual life in the practical, everyday activities of being a human being. And so we are going through, and the traditions are applicable to the same way to any community. I dream of an international government that uses the 12 traditions of recovery because they are brilliant. And seriously, think about it. If these steps and these traditions can help millions of drunks and junkies figure it out, I'm just saying there might be some powerful things going on there. There just might be. So, that's what we're doing this year. February, see, and here's the easy part. There's 12 months, 12 steps, 12 traditions. The planning did itself, right? So the first 2 weeks we do the steps. And the second 2 weeks we do the tradition. Today, we're doing the back half of the second tradition. Our leaders are but trusted servants. They do not govern. Now, I know most of you, and I'm pretty sure if I made a list of who, I'd be right on target, just went, yeah, right. Because we're in an atmosphere where it certainly feels like there is no leader, and we're only being governed. Right? What does governance mean? First of all, it comes from the Greek root meaning to steer. To steer. Now think about leadership. You have to lead from where? the front. You can't lead from the back. That's called pushing. Okay. Leadership, even a pet lead, right? You're in the front. So leadership demands that leaders get there first in order to steer anybody in the right direction. Otherwise, there is actually an agricultural reason that humanity is often referred to as sheep, and it's not an uplifting one. Sheep are so deeply herd entrenched animals. If the lead sheep walks off a cliff, the whole herd will follow them right off the cliff. So I invite you to consider that you're not a sheep, that you can see the cliff coming, even if the leader doesn't. If I'm headed off the cliff, please alert me. Hello, do you see the cliff? Because maybe I don't. But certainly, if I go over, do not come with me. That's not leadership. That's oops. And one that may or may not be recoverable in this human realm. Our leaders are but trusted servants. They do not govern. How many consciousness are there? One. How many minds are there? One. What's governing us? One mind. One mind must be self-governing. Must be. There's nothing outside of it to govern it. Right? The problem is we have all stopped knowing that. We have all surrendered our birthright to something outside of us. And beloveds, as ugly as it is to accept, that is 100% victim consciousness. 100%. It says, I am a victim of governance. No, you're not. Only if you put your focus in the physical realm. Your birthright is consciousness. You are made of consciousness. You are mind in form. You're mind in body. Now, I know that's a lot for us to wrap our heads around in the physical realm, right? One of the most illuminating things that mystics have revealed is that evil is not an ultimate authority, an ultimate reality. Evil is simply an experience of the soul on its journey toward reality. If we get off the journey, if we give up and sit on the sidelines, we're not a victim of governance. We're a participant. Because we're saying, okay, you're in charge, I'm not. And every time we do that, we throw away the power of our birthright to be a part of the solution. Why? Because we don't see it immediately. All right? We like immediate results. That's why our world is filled with convenience stores. We'll pay more money to get it quick. Right? You get the same thing if you drive 3 feet further and go to the grocery store, but you'd have to walk 10 extra steps. But I'll pay $5 more because it's quick, it's convenient. Creation doesn't work on our time clock. We created time and space in order to navigate this human realm. It's temporal. If humanity ceases to exist, pretty sure time and space goes with it. Because it's not needed. Right? We need it, so we live in it, but we don't have to govern ourselves by it. My friend and mentor, Reverend Dr. Deborah L. Johnson, founder of Inner Light Ministries in Santa Cruz, California, was on a panel at a prayer symposium. And somebody was challenging her about the idea that all prayers are answered. And they were challenging her in a pretty confrontational, ugly way. That it was all a bunch of crap. Wasn't true. All prayers are not answered. And Rev D went within. She closed her eyes and she just went within for about 30 seconds. Now, Rev D is an African-American lesbian. And when she opened her eyes, this is what she said. I am the answered prayer of my ancestors. I am the answered prayers of my ancestors. Because she's not enslaved. And she lives her life as she chooses. You are the answered prayer of our metaphysical ancestors. We are the answered prayer of these mystics that continue to teach us. I've talked to many of you concerned about the world we're leaving for our children. What prayer will be answered in their lives that you're praying? See, because if you're praying for demise to stop, you're praying for demise. Every thought in mind is eternal. What thoughts are you adding? You cannot neutralize acid by removing the acid. Right? Have any scientists in here? Right? You can't remove, you've got a beaker full of acid. You can't take the acid out. But you can add chemicals to neutralize it. What are you adding to neutralize the misuse of creation? What are you adding to neutralize the misuse of power? What are you adding? Because every one of us has the power and the privilege to add what we want. But if we keep focusing and flooding our attention and our energy to what we don't want, guess what happens? What you don't want just gets bigger and bigger and bigger. Yeah, right? Exactly. Come here, Jamie. Push. Can you resist if I do this?
Good Lord. Oh, that was a hell of a setup.
Do you see what's required to resist? You have to keep the thing you don't want. You're locked in with it. You're locked in with it. That's why what you resist persists, because you insist on it being present so you can resist it. If it's not there, there's no resistance. That's on you. I beg you, as one who lives in this world with you, stop it. Stop it. Dare to do the work. Dare to do the work. Become aware of what's operating in your thoughts. and challenge it and right the ship. Right? Govern is a nautical term for steering a ship. There's lots of things that happen if you steer the ship incorrectly. Right? Maybe it's not ready to channel right directly into the wave. Sometimes that's helpful. Sometimes it's not. Depends on the size of the wave. Sometimes, if you've ever sailed, you tack back and forth. It's not a straight line. So maybe we need to tack. I don't know. But here's what I do know. Each one of us is infinite intelligence in form. Everything we need to know is already 100% available as you. More than in you, it is you. You are made of it. And so it's as simple as claiming and affirming. I am infinite intelligence in form. Everything I need to know is already present in me. I choose to know it now. And then when it shows up, you get to choose. Are you going to follow it? Are you going to be self-governing and do what consciousness as you is seeking to do? Or are you going to go back to the sideline and point fingers? I'm not going to pretend that everybody in this room has the same opinion, because they don't. Right? About anything. We just don't. If we did, there'd only need to be one of us here. Right? We are an expansion of creation's experience of itself. No two of us are supposed to be alike. We're just not. I want to wrap up with this. Last night I watched something I'd never seen before that made me so incredibly proud to live in this state. The Black History Oratory Competition. Never seen that. Heard about them, but never seen it on national TV coverage in an area. Oh my God. And the winner is going to close us out. And I invite you to listen carefully to what this 16-year-old young woman has to say. It is poignant, it is purposeful, it is spiritual, and it is my prayer.
My name is Veronica King, and I'm a junior at the Mercy High School of Baltimore. We are all bound up together in one great bundle of humanity, and society cannot trample on the weakest and feeblest of its members without receiving the curse on its own soul. This quote by Frances Ellen Watkins Harper is painfully true. We were meant to live in community with one another, where we embrace everyone's differences and utilize their unique strengths for the betterment of said community. It's disheartening that throughout history, the value of each person's unique traits has been ignored, and rather caused separation between people based on trivial reasons, such as race, ethnicity, or phenotype. It's trivial because while we are all different, that is exactly what makes a well-functioning society. Having multifaceted people that are all inherently unique from one another. It is in the hyperfixation of these differences that we lose the potential to create a stronger society. It is the fear of the unknown and misunderstanding that causes people to act out in violence and oppression. Let's look at the early eras of racial divisions, for example. These divisions were not just drawn between African Americans and white people, no. They were drawn between different groups of white people as well. The English hated the Irish, the Dutch hated the English, etc. The wealthiest amongst these groups quickly realized that the number of enslaved African Americans and poor white people immensely outnumbered the amount of rich white people. To combat a potential uprising, these rich white men created militias and other outlets for power so that poor white men would feel a sense of superiority against their African American counterparts. This was all so that they would not come together and start an uprising against them. This facade of power became so intense, in fact, that the same conditions were replicated between some free and enslaved African Americans. This guise of superiority causes the indifference Watkins Harper speaks of in her excerpt. Even with the installation of movements like women's suffrage, many white people, especially women, were indifferent to the harsh physical, spiritual, and societal conditions Black Americans faced. This was in exchange for the potential bettering of conditions for them. People who claimed to be abolitionists stayed silent when people like Watkins Harper stated that no matter what rights you give to white women, until the US becomes so colorblind that I can walk down the street and get on the same bus as white people, America will never be free. The indifference of the oppressor to change the conditions of the oppressed is what keeps society from reaching its fullest potential. This is the curse Watkins Harper speaks of. This curse is not a spiritual manifestation, no, but the physical representation of the current state of our world. The violence, detestation, and bloodshed that takes place throughout our world is the physical manifestation of the effects of failing to take care of the weakest and feeblest members of our society. This is why the world is in such shambles. As Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. stated from his letter from Birmingham jail, an injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. So until we as a community learn to embrace our differences and utilize the unique strengths of each individual, we will never reach our fullest potential. We must reverse the curse placed upon us due to the inaction of our forefathers and stand up against redundant, prejudiced rhetoric. It is only when we learn to do this that the curse will be lifted.
I invite you, take that in. Let that inform your prayer work. Let go of finger pointing and add what you want. Quit worrying about what you don't want. I'm not saying put your head in the sand and pretend you're not on planet Earth. I'm saying stop worrying about it. Stop focusing on it. Focus on what you want. Focus on spiritual principle. And above all, remember what faith is. It is the substance. The substance. That's what each of us is. The substance of things not seen. The evidence of things hoped for. That tells us if you want to see it, you have to see it before you see it. When we do see what we don't see, we will see what we haven't seen. Thank you.